What is the big picture of the Indian food industry? Because that is one space where clearly there is going to be a huge explosion in demand, change in terms of consumer spending patterns, reach has increased, awareness has increased. So we'll take the conversation forward with Harish Bijoor, CEO with Harish Bijoor Consultants, and also we'll try and rope in an analyst with Mr. Anil Talreja, his partner with Deloitte. So Harish, let me start with you. Looks like the deal between Glaxo Consumer and Nestle is in the final lap, and the deal valuation could be anywhere between $3.5 to $4 billion. But I'm not intrigued with the deal valuation. I'm more intrigued with what is happening in the health food space. Couple of days ago, the Cadila Group also bought up Glucon-D. Now there is another deal happening in the health food space. So why is there so much of A, desperation, and B, interest in the so-called health food drink space?
Well, firstly, these are very good times to be in the food and beverage business. I keep saying, anything that's related to the stomach, the bladder, the skin, and the hair, beautiful businesses. Why the interest in the health side of business, particularly what Cadila picked up at an interesting valuation, and what possibly Nestle will do between 3.5 to 4 billion USD, it simply means to say that companies are really looking to mop up healthy brands up from the market and add to their portfolio. Companies which are hitherto in the semi-health or non-health arenas are also looking at healthifying their portfolios. The idea simply is that the country is moving towards a health revolution. There are two kinds of nations, one which discovers wealth first and health later, and the other which discovers health first and wealth later. We are a nation which discovers wealth first and will then discover health. So I think the healthy bandwagon is growing. Therefore, if you look at a valuation of about 4 billion USD for a possible Nestle GSK buyout on the brands that you're talking, we're really talking about something like 3.5 to 3.6 US dollar per human being in India. And I think that is an interesting way to look at valuation because at the end of the day, it's that many bellies and bladders, or that many bladders which will pour Horlicks into them.
Oh, yes, indeed. Anil, your take on how busy is the market getting?
See, I personally believe that you always have this notion of whether you eat to live or you live to eat. And if you take a survey,
and there's a thin line between both.
Exactly. If you take a survey of the Indian consumer, I'm sure you will get a 50-50. Yeah. Half the guys will say I eat to live, and the other half will say the other way. I think it's all to do with a combination of what is satisfying the consumer at the end of it. I think, as Harish mentioned, it starts with the bladder and then the skin. I would still say that it starts with the stomach and the bladder and ends over there, because you may actually survive without a few of these skin-related products, but you can't survive without food. And within food, because of increased consumer awareness, and thanks to internet, and thanks to the young consumer, I must say, because the average consumer today age is about 25 to 28. Because of that, there is a lot of pressure on companies to try and get more and more health-oriented or health-related food as opposed to food which is not very healthy. So it's putting everybody on toes to try and come up with much more innovation and research and development in their products so as to reach their marketing targets.
Is it true? Because in Mumbai, we still eat vada pav. You go to, Delhi, we still talk about chole bhature. You go to down south, it's all about idli dosa. No, we may not be consuming it, but you look at the average Joe on the street. The average Joe on the street is still eating samosa, kachori, vada pavs and chola kulcha. I'm saying that we may talk about health, but is that a very niche segment? Because the broad messaging is that you need a high calorie input which satisfied your calorie needs.
Well, I'll tell you, it's very difficult to put up a trend because the consumer market, if you look at the type of consumers, is huge. You've got various segments. So you've got the age profile, then you have different income levels. People who can't afford expensive food, they'll definitely go to the street side and have food because they just can't do without it, obviously. So the market's too large. Having said that, I think if you look at the niche market that you were referring to, I think it's more going to be driven by what is healthy for me. I can have a vada pav on the street, but I don't think I can have that every day. You know, perhaps I can have a good, nice, healthy drink every day if I can afford it. So there are a lot of criteria, including price points, you know, what is my standard of living, what's my income earning capacity. That's the driver. But you'll see consumers everywhere because everybody has different price points and different income earning capacity.
Okay, Harish, let's steer the conversation towards why we thought of it in the first place. And you know, there's much talk about who's going to bag GSK's brand Horlicks. And you know, while there are news reports saying that actually Nestle is the front runner in the race to be acquiring and they're willing to pay top dollar. But according to you, who do you think would be best suited to acquire a brand like Horlicks, wherein sales have been dwindling, and over the years, if you do take out the history, it's been slowing down. There's intense competition in the healthy children's drink segment, if I can call it that, this category. So why then Horlicks, and why this kind of top price?
You know, very strictly speaking, Horlicks is a kind of a palliative food as far as I think of it. I don't think of it as a beverage, it's a food. And, you know, if you look at India, you know, we do a lot of nasty things, but very interesting things, like, you know, eating the vada pav and chole, kulcha, etc. that you say. But, you know, there needs to be a palliative to that. So there is a kind of a sin we commit, and there you need to have a palliative to clean that sin. And that clean the sin is really about, you know, getting into certain healthy items which you put into your daily intake. The vitamin lobby and the fortified lobby, and I call them lobbies, have still not entered India in a big way. In the sense that, you know, India is still about eating the natural stuff. Some of the natural stuff is not all that good, but you still eat it. The vitamins lobby, as we see in the United States of America or large parts of Europe, is going to enter India in a big way, wherein we are going to say, in addition to all the foods that you eat, you need to put in other palliatives into you. And if that palliative happens to be a healthy drink, then why not? It's a healthy way of taking that palliative rather than taking a tablet. So Horlicks could be a drink, Horlicks could be a tablet. But between the two, you know, I'd rather drink the Horlicks than anything else. To your first question, I think both Nestle and Unilever seem equally well placed to handle the brand. You know, because of reach, because of rural reach. I mean, you know, imagine Horlicks has a tremendous rural reach. So does Nestle, so does Unilever. And consumption is bound to grow in these categories. Therefore, the interest, therefore, this 3.5 to 4 billion USD.
If I look at the demand scenario for India, there is a market share. You know, the pie of consumption always grows because you have a nominal GDP growth of 10 to 11%. So, you know, we are getting richer, we are getting better, we will consume more. But within that, there are categories which will do well. Within that, there is going to be this entire market share gain and market share loss. New categories will get entered. So this is 2018. Let's say hypothetically, if you're looking at the Indian food market in 2025, which is what, you know, firms like yours, they do. What are you projecting? Which category will be bigger? Which category will be smaller? Which potential new categories will get created?
So, you know, I always believe that whatever is produced in India easily gets consumed. In fact, we'll end up importing a lot of the food. And I think that trend is going to continue, mainly because the sheer size of the market. So there will be growth all across, whether it's food, and within food, when you look at drinks, aerated, non-aerated. So whilst there are, you know, issues which are being talked about against unhealthy drinks, I don't think there's a case for no growth. There will be growth all across. But amongst these, I think there will certainly be a spike in those products which are more into food and beverages, which are more suitable to health. And when I say more suitable to health, I mean they are not harming anybody's health. Now, Indians generally tend to overeat. You know, we all know that. And I think if you have something more, and you know it's not going to harm you, you will be more relaxed, as opposed to you keep having anything more and you're scared after that as to what's going to happen to your health. So I believe the trend is moving towards any food which is either an edible or a drink, as Harish mentioned, whether you can have a pill or a liquid. I think any food which does not cause harm to health is going to be causing the spike in the next 4 or 5 years, and mainly because of increased awareness and the profile of the consumer.
Harish, just comment on what do you think could be the entire assortment in terms of which company will have better say. If I currently look at the Indian food sector per se, you've not had too many disruptive players. Britannia is doing their own bit, Patanjali here and there in bits and pieces. You have Hector Beverages, they've tried something innovative in the juice market, but they've also had a start and a stop kind of a journey. Where do you think the food market in terms of pecking order is headed? Will the MNC players rule it, or there is a space for a very large disruptive player, and a Patanjali moment what happened in the soap and the shampoo category could also happen in the food category?
I'm in agreement with Anil when he says that, there's space for everybody, because, there are all kinds of foods which are going to form the portfolio of 2025. Because, the unhealthy versions will compete with the healthy versions. The unhealthy versions are likely to be much more popular than the healthy versions, because consumers have a tendency to run away from anything that's sounding healthy or anything that is touted to be healthy. So most of the time, what's going to happen now is every company is going to have a portfolio. But the sad thing is, the companies which are attempting disruption are attempting niche disruption. And niche disruption to say that I'm going to look at health, but health is going to possibly look at about 2% of my portfolio. And I think that is where the gap lies. Because a company, if it has the ability to be a completely disruptive company, 100% disruption company like Patanjali Ayurved was, and I still think Patanjali Ayurved has the potential to be that, but I don't think they've taken enough steps in food and beverage. They made certain wrong moves like noodles, etc., which is certainly not their space. Imagine a Patanjali Ayurved inventing itself with total foods which are palliative foods, which are Ayurvedic foods, which are complete foods which combat and say that, hey, listen, you're eating this, you shouldn't be eating that, it's doing wrong things to you, you should be eating this. So the entire portfolio needs to be the healthy portfolio. There's one problem with major MNCs within our country. We have two portfolios, and that is the problem. One is the good for health, and the other is, the general portfolio. When you have two portfolios, you don't focus enough on the new. Whereas when you have only one portfolio, you might focus deeply. And therefore, the space and scope for companies like Baba Ramdev's and Balakrishna's Patanjali Ayurved. Focus is going to be eminently useful for companies to develop soulless, health-oriented products, not defocus.
We've established the growth part of the story, and I think there's no taking away from that aspect. I want to understand, Anil, on the pricing side, because now with this deal being in the works, I mean, you're talking of a valuation of close to about $4 billion. How do you price that growth at a time that, like you said, the space is getting very competitive, and the consumer is also being very price sensitive?
So there are two parts to this. One is the consumer part, and a lot of the sales in India are driven by the price point to the ultimate consumer. As I was mentioning, because of the different topography and consumer profiles that we have in our country, if you have any food article or item which is expensive, so to say, it's not going to sell. So you have to put your price very attractive. Now that puts pressure on the revenues of any company, because you can't put a higher price and then hence you can't get a lot of revenues. And hence the attention is on the costs. And with cost, besides the operating and the administrative and the manufacturing cost, you also have cost of the brand. And today I believe that any M&A transaction that will happen will be more driven by what is the value of that brand, what is the price that a buyer is going to be paying for buying the brand. Because it is obviously a brand that gives loyalty to the consumer. And the Indian consumer, I believe, is very thick. Once an Indian consumer marries a particular product, then it's lifetime, unless and until something drastic is going to happen with that product or the brand. And then it also adds on to the value of the brand, because there's a lot of mouth-to-mouth publicity. So, in your community, in your family, you will say, look, this product, this brand is good, and everybody will start using it. That's the best way to market the product. So, but in order to reach that, it's going to be a big struggle for any company to ensure that that brand reaches the inner circle of the Indian consumer's preference.
Okay, gentlemen, appreciate your time.